Are you tired of feeling bad because people ask you rude questions or say rude things to you at work and you don't know how to answer it in the moment? Stick with me. I'm communication coach Dan O'Connor, and I'm going to give you the words. All right, so picture this. You're at your desk, minding your own business, and then somebody comes up and says one of these.
Hey, how come you don't have to wear a mask like everybody else?
Or,
you need to do ho-ya. Could you repeat that back to me, what I just said to you?
Or,
hey, did you get that report done that the boss asked you to do?
Now you may want to say something like, I did actually. In fact, I made 2 copies. One for the boss, and here is yours. I made it for you so you can shove it up your Don't say that. The assertive communicator takes the opportunity of being presented with questions or comments that are rude in the workplace to showcase their professional communication skills in that moment. And it sounds something like this. You want to be prepared if you're going to get...
Did you understand what I just said? Do you get that? Could you repeat that back to me, what I just said?
You know, those types of questions.
Does that make sense to you, or are you a ding-dong?
I'm going to break it down for you step by step. Here you go.
And now it's time for a breakdown.
Number 1, use the person's name as you make eye contact and tilt your head forward just a little bit, like this. John, do not tilt your head to the side. Don't look away. Make sure that you're letting them know, I am in this moment and I'm talking to you. Number 2, you want to confirm that you do understand what they just said and that you realize they're asking you for confirmation. Maybe someplace along the lines, for whatever reason, they got the impression that you don't always understand. That's not the worst thing that can happen or the worst thing that people can think about us. I can understand that. So I'm going to acknowledge that request and that desire by saying something such as, I understand that you want to ensure that I heard and understood you. So right there, I'm letting you know I received the message that you sent to me, okay? And then step number 3, I'm going to clearly state what I'm trying to avoid. This part is crucial because I want to make it known. I'm trying to avoid something that is widely known as an undesirable situation. That is a reasonable thing to do. It might sound like this, but to avoid being put on the spot or humiliated or shamed, that's what's going on here. So I'm letting you know what's going on. Remember that the material in this video has been taken from an upcoming live tutorial that I'll be giving. If you are interested in joining me, hit that link now and I'll see you there. And now I'm going to suggest a reasonable alternative, and I'm going to tell you that you'll get what you're looking for while I'll get what I'm looking for. It sounds something like this. But how about I go back to my desk and I shoot you a quick email outlining what you just told me? I think that is the most effective way to uncover and rectify any misunderstanding that I might have while ensuring that I'm not inadvertently the subject of workplace bullying or harassment or treated as though I'm less than or less smarter than. I know you are not trying to do that. I just want to make sure that I don't feel that way because that makes it more difficult for me to give you what you want. So I'm telling you, you're going to get what you want. I'm giving you a benefit statement, and I'm telling you how we can do that in a very reasonable way. And then all I have to do is wrap it up. Okay, before we move right along and wrap it up, I need to take a moment here to talk about the passive voice because it keeps coming up. And people keep asking me questions where the answer is the passive voice for them. And I wanted to point that out for those of you who could really use a refresher on what the passive voice is, how it works, and how you can use it in the workplace. Remember that the passive voice is simply a shift in tense where I'm saying instead of I kicked the ball, I being the subject, kicked is the verb, ball is the direct object, that's the active voice. The subject of the sentence acts. It does something. I kicked the ball. Simple. If I wanted to say that same thing but in the passive voice, the way we would do that is how. The ball was kicked by me. I could even leave out the by me, and that is the key. When you want to leave out the by whom, who did this? Who's responsible for this behavior? Use the passive voice and you can always do it. If I want to tell my boss, for example, hey, you're really creating a hostile workplace environment when you ask me those types of insulting questions and you put me in the spot like that. If I instead use the passive voice and say, hey, unfortunately, I believe there is a hostile work environment being created when I'm asked those types of questions and put on the spot. You know what I mean? There you go. Simple. I'm not saying you did this. I'm simply saying this was done. So if I need to call people out on their behavior, but I know that they don't like taking feedback, I can just say, hey, you know what? We're going to leave the person who did it out of it and simply say, instead of you ruined our company, Our company has been ruined. It's a simple shift, but it makes a big difference. I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about what you did. I'm simply talking about the results or what happened. If you can master the passive voice and being able to reframe your sentences on the fly, that is a skill that will serve you forever. And it really showcases, again, in the moment when you need it, your professional, powerful communication skills. And those are the number one skills that people look for when they're looking to promote or hire. And then all I have to do is wrap it up by asking them to agree with what I just proposed, because it is so reasonable, and it sounds something like this. Does that sound reasonable to you, John? Now, I don't want to use a tag question. Remember that in my live tutorials, by the way, one is coming up. There'll be information in the comments below. Click on that if you're interested in joining me in a live tutorial so that you can gain skills like this. You'll learn more about tag questions, spotlight questions, clarifying questions, things like that. You don't want to use a tag question. And remember that a tag question sounds like, that sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Because that's a little bit too aggressive for this situation. Instead, I want to ask a simple closed-ended question. Does that sound reasonable to you, John? Now, the reason I said reasonable is because that is reasonable. It is a very rare professional that would say that that is not a reasonable request to let me go back to my desk where my thoughts are clear and answer your need by giving you the information that you just presented to me in a way that facilitates that for me and for you. That's reasonable. So if you're going to say no, that does not sound reasonable, that would make you an unreasonable person. So I want to have those steps in my head. You see what I'm saying? I want to make sure that I'm using a systematic approach to engaging in assertive communication, because remember, passive, aggressive, those are both natural ways to communicate. You can tell when somebody has had communication training or has a communication coach because they learn how to communicate in an assertive way. That's not natural. It's learned behavior. And what I just gave you, that's what a TI is. So let's talk about another situation. Before we do, if you found value in this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button. That's the best way to support this channel. And to get your question answered, maybe even live, hit that notification bell. That's the best way to be alerted when we're having an upcoming session so that you can participate and join me and get your questions answered live. They're really fun too. The next question we'll be answering is a question like when a coworker is checking up on you because they think they're your boss and they ask you questions like,
Hey, did you get that report done that the boss asked you to do?
to gain more skills like this so that you can always have the right response at work, you can click the link below to check out some of my resources in my online communication skills training store, or we also have an upcoming live event if you want to join me in that. Make sure to click the link in the description below. I hope to see you there.